So I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is James Kukola, and I am the chair of the board of the Sierra Club Foundation of BC. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the territories of the Lekwungen speaking people, known now as the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. And I give thanks to them for the care they've taken of this land since time immemorial and the care that they take on over this land today. I grew up on Wasanic territories, and my ancestry comes from France, particularly the island of Corsica and Ireland. And I would invite everybody to use the chat function on Zoom to introduce yourselves and to acknowledge your own territories you're calling in from tonight. And we'll put a link in there so folks can, I think you might just put a link in there. If you don't know your own territories, you can look them up. So we have our bylaws state for an annual general meeting to occur, we need to have a quorum of 10 members, which we do have on this call tonight, so we can continue. I want to do a quick couple of things for folks who may be unfamiliar. I know it feels like everybody is an expert on Zoom by now, but just in case, in the bottom of your screen, you'll have a chat button, a little chat box. If you have any questions, please use the chat function, ask your question, and we can have somebody assist you. There's also a raised hands function under the reactions. If you have questions, click on the reactions button and use the raised hand feature so we can answer your question. As we go through the meeting tonight, I will be using the polling function in Zoom. So when we go to adopt the agenda or the minutes or vote on a motion, we will use that function. A pop-up will come up. The question will stay up there for 45 seconds, so everybody has time to complete it, and then it'll show the results of how everybody voted. If at any time people have questions about this or anything else, don't feel like the procedure needs to get in the way, please do ask the question either in the chat or raise your hand and I can call on you. So as the chair of the board, I'll be chairing this meeting, but there's going to be a number of other folks who will be assisting in the presentations tonight. As those people come in, we'll introduce them as well. So if we can just jump to the next slide and we'll get this going. So our agenda tonight is as follows. We'll do an adoption of the agenda in a moment. The approval of the minutes, when that comes up, we'll put the minutes in the chat box so you can all see them. We'll give folks a moment to review them. Well, then we'll do a report for myself, a report from the executive director, and then we'll hear from staff about campaigns and education updates. And then we're going to pass it over to Darius for the appointment of the auditor and the adoption of the financial statements. And then we'll hear from the nominations committee and then the election for directors. After that, there are a number of volunteer awards that we're going to do, and then we'll hear some memorial tributes. Does anybody have any questions on the agenda? If you have any questions on the agenda, please put it in the chat or use the reactions button to raise your hand. So with every time I do a motion, I'm also going to ask for a mover and a seconder. So this is the agenda that's going to be proposed to you here. I would now ask if there is a mover for this agenda. If you would like to move the agenda, please type me or moved in the chat. Thank you, Irby, for the moving it. Would somebody please second the motion? Second. There's a question if there's a hard copy of these reports. I'm going to ask, is there somebody from the staff who can answer if there are hard copies of the reports? Thank you, Elizabeth. So June, we can have them emailed. We can have them mailed. We can have them mailed to you if you'd like. If you like that, maybe we can have somebody reach out to you to arrange that if that's something you'd like to see happen. Okay, so let's pop over to the. So now it's moved and seconded. Are there any amendments to the agenda? I'm not seeing any requests for amendments, so we're going to go on to the adoption of the agenda. So let's go to the next slide here. So, okay, I'm going to launch a poll. You'll have 45 seconds to approve the agenda. And so for those who just joined, we're just voting on adopting of the agenda. We'll have 45 seconds for folks to vote on this resolution. And if you're registered as a co-host in the Zoom meeting, you won't be able to vote. So if you're wondering why that didn't pop up and you're a member of the staff who's a co-host, that's why. So for those who haven't voted, this is about whether or not we want to approve the agenda for tonight. We'll let it go for another 5 seconds. Okay. So the results should be on your screen now. Can somebody give me a thumb or give me a type? Yes, I see it in the chat. So I know that you do actually see it. Or somebody wave and smile at me so you see it. Great, thank you. Okay. Let's move to the next slide here. So the next slide is the adoption of the minutes from our 2020 AGM. So in the chat, there's going to be a link to the minutes. Momentarily. So folks can take a look at the minutes there if you haven't already seen them. So please take a moment, feel free to look at them. June, we can have the bylaws, we can have shared to you. I'll even find a link for you while folks are reviewing the minutes. No worries, there's a link to the bylaws. Oh, look at that, somebody beat me to it. Oh yeah, thank you. So the minutes are up for our consideration here. Can I have a mover for the minutes from 2020? To do that, I'd ask that somebody writes moved or me in the chat. Moved by Susan Kim. Thank you, Susan. And Elaine, I'm going to take you as a seconder if that's okay. So the motion or the minutes have been moved and seconded. Are there any questions, comments, or amendments on the minutes? I'm not seeing any. So let's go to the next slide and let's do our vote. So same as before, I'll give folks 45 seconds if they want to approve or not approve the minutes. You can also abstain if you'd like. So we'll leave that up for another 15 seconds. So everybody has a chance to vote. All right. So the minutes are adopted. Thank you, folks, for going through those motions. And let's move to the next slide. Hey, it's me. So as I mentioned, my name is James Kukola. I've been honored to be the chair of the Sierra Club Foundation of BC's Board of Directors for the past 2 years. This is my 4th year in total on the board, which means somehow I've become one of the senior members of the board, and I'm not exactly sure how that happened. While I was writing this up, I was reflecting on, I was reading my notes from last year's AGM, and I think that we were all hoping that this year was going to look a little bit different than it has turned out. You know, there are so many people on the board now that I haven't actually had a chance to meet face to face, which is seems pretty wild because it's a lovely group of people, and in years past we might have a retreat or two a year so that we can actually meet and work on the organizational priorities. So I look very much forward to the day when we can all get together and see each other in person. I want to take a moment to thank 2 outgoing board members, Legault, who has been on the board for the past, I think, 2.5 years now. He's been a great addition to the board, especially on the Jedi committee. I know he's very much into his research right now, and I think it's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the results of that. And I want to give a moment of appreciation and thanks for his time that he's had on the board. And earlier this year, we also had Tasca Charong step down. She went on to take an opportunity with the provincial government. I want to acknowledge the energy and time that she put into the organization, and I really appreciate kind of how she invigorated everybody around her. So I know that she's going to go on to do great things in her new role, and so all the best to her. The board over the last year has been focused on working with staff to update policies, support fundraisers, and continue the Jedi work that's required and very much needed. And we're going to continue to work on these things over the next year, and we hope that we'll be able to update and implement policies in the near future. This remains a high priority for the board. Those of you who were in attendance last year would recall that we had a discussion on honorariums that were established for board members. So there was a bit of a hiccup on this. Despite having assurances from the CRA that this was allowed, we were given a revised interpretation earlier this year. And as a result, the bylaw that would have been adopted would have contravened some of our charitable status. So it was not changed, and no directors received any honorariums this year, in case anybody was wondering. And I want to give a big thanks to the membership, all of you here, all of our directors and all of our staff. Your contributions are incredible, and none of this work could happen without you. You know, the staff have been working through, and I'm sure that Hannah will talk about it a bit more in a moment, but the staff have been working through some very challenging times, you know, not just COVID, but you know, we all know that the work is important and has never been more important. We see heat domes and wildfires, diminishing old growth trees, and the work that we do here is never been more important. So thank you to everybody for your contributions to make this important work happen. But I think I'll leave my report there, nice and short. If anybody has any questions, then I'll take it. I'll allow you to either use your reaction button to put up your hand and I can call on you, or you can type your question in the chat. And Mark, I see your question. And note that Rebecca wasn't able to log on. So maybe there's something we can do for that. Yeah, okay. So there's a couple of people who are having difficulty logging on. There's a question about how the COVID affected our school programs. And I'm going to ask you to hold on to that question because we do have a report coming from our education staff who will be able to address it better than I will. So that's a great question. Are there any other questions about the board? Yeah, Mark, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a message directly. And if you want to send direct messages back to me, we can count your vote that way. Does that work for you, Mark? Oh, sorry, Rebecca, not Mark. But otherwise, okay. All right, with that, I'll leave my chair's report and we will now head over to the more interesting report, which is a report from the executive director. So I would like to introduce Hannah and pass it over to her. And yeah, over to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, James, and good evening, everyone. I really want to echo the thanks that James extended to all of you, our members, as well as our staff and board. As James also said, this past year has been a difficult one for all of us in so many ways, with a lot of challenges, and we weren't expecting also to have to work through this full year under the restrictions and some of the hardships that the pandemic has brought to us. But the support that we've received from our membership and from volunteers and from donors over this time has been absolutely extraordinary. We were just discussing right before our AGM here that the number of our monthly donors has actually increased by 50%, which is a huge amount of support for us over this past year. So people have really stepped in to address some of the challenges. And I know that our number of volunteers that have been reaching out to us to offer help and expertise in all kinds of different areas has also just skyrocketed over the past year. So, as executive director, I was certainly quite worried when the pandemic hit about how we would be able to weather it, but we have been so supported and held up by you, our members, and by new members and the community at large. So we're just incredibly grateful for that. So I just want to thank all of you on behalf of our staff and also our incredible volunteer board as well. So as James raised, the work that we do has really come into the forefront of our community's minds over the past year and over the past months in particular, as we as a province struggled with the wildfires and also with the heat dome. And so that's brought a lot of additional focus and energy and also concern and grief into the work that we do. A huge focus of our strategic plan, which we are now nearing the halfway point on, is a recognition that we cannot do this work alone. Those of us that self-identify as environmentalists need the help and the wisdom and the energy of so many others in order to be able to be effective in this work. And we've really put a lot of energy in this past year into building new relationships with all kinds of different communities, with artists, with faith groups and faith leaders, with unions, with folks from rural communities that are in resource dependent communities. And we continue to try and strengthen our capacity as an organization to work collaboratively and respectfully with Indigenous governments and Indigenous legal processes. And that's ongoing work for our organization as we attempt to decolonize some of our thinking and to increase our understanding and our respect. And we have fantastic Indigenous colleagues and board members that are really leading that work, and we're so grateful for that. So there have been a lot of changes in the way that we work as a result of that. So I just wanted to, some of my colleagues, Elizabeth and Hai, are going to go more deeply into some of the specific things that we're working on in both across our campaigns team as well as in our education team. But I did want to just refresh your memories on our two primary goals that are in our strategic plan. And I think there's I think the next slide has those. Yeah, so So our two primary strategic goals, and these are broken down in a lot more detail within the strat plan, which is also available, and I think the link might be in the chat. But our two primary strategic goals are that within the context of respecting Indigenous jurisdiction, we will firstly support and enable leadership for climate action and resilience, with an emphasis on those communities that are most impacted by the ecological crisis. So again, that connects to what I was saying before about the efforts that we've been making to build relationships and work collaboratively with diverse communities, all of whom are being impacted by the climate crisis in different ways, and who have different lived experience, different knowledge, different expertise, and different ways of approaching the problem. And so we've been really, increasing our investment in building those relationships and working together within the communities that those leaders come from. And then our second goal is to protect ecosystems and nurture their abundance to ensure a viable future for all. So of course, as an organization, we are well known for our ecosystem protection work, and in particular for the work that we have been doing on protecting old growth forests, really since our inception over 50 years ago. And over this past year, as I'm sure all of you are aware, this has just really exploded into the news cycle with what's been happening at Adix or Fairy Creek. And the land defenders there have been fighting so hard to protect those forests, and of course we're all aware that while that story is really in the light of the media, of course there are other old growth forests and other ecosystems that are under threat all across the province, and people there fighting to protect those places as well, though often not with the same level of media scrutiny on them. So I think without further ado, I will turn it over to my colleague Elizabeth, who is going to jump into some of the details in terms of each of those goals, what some of our specific strategies have been to address them, and some highlights of over the past year, what our campaigners and other colleagues and volunteers and those that we work with have been doing specifically to work towards those goals. So thank you so much, everyone. Really grateful to all of you for being here tonight, and look forward to any questions that you may have throughout the remainder of the evening as well.
Thanks so much, Hannah. So as Hannah said, we are working towards those two goals, which are, of course, enormous and broad. And I just wanted to quickly review the metrics that we set forward for ourselves in the strategic plan, so that you can get a sense of why it is that we're doing so many different things. And part of it is that our role is to support others who are doing this work. And so sometimes it may appear as though we're doing things that are completely disparate, but hopefully this will explain how they are all part of our broader strategy. So the first goal around climate action and resilience, we will measure our success by providing support for leadership opportunities at the local level to empower climate action and resilience. We will enable hundreds of local leaders to build local capacity for climate action with the goal of 1,000 local leaders actively engaged by 2030. We will have made tangible gains towards strong climate policies that reflect the input of local climate leaders. And we will meaningfully engage with groups representing marginalized communities with the goal of forming new relationships of collaboration and mutual support. And then towards the second goal around ecosystem protection, to protect and restore ecosystems for abundance, Sierra Club BC will measure success based on whether by 2023 we have worked with communities to designate significantly more of BC as some form of protected or connectivity area, with the goal of 30% by 2030 and 50% longer term. And also whether we have contributed to a culture of respect with all ecosystems, including the ways that residents of BC know and interact with nature. And this piece was especially important because if we were only to focus on the goal of 30%, that often means that the other 70% becomes a sacrifice zone. And that's not our intention in any way. And so this contributing to a culture of respect means that all lands and waters are cared for. And so that was really important to us to highlight. So I'm going to do a super rapid fire highlight of all of the amazing things. I'm sure I've missed some, yeah, Maya, if you want to go ahead and give me the next slide, I'll talk about what we've been up to this year. So our lead organizer, Flossie, has been focused on building connections with spiritual and faith communities, labor unions, and community networks. We hosted an amazing event called Faith in Trees, which was a collaboration with Greater Victoria Acting Together and St. John the Divine. We had 105 people sign up, and it included hearing a bit of a sermon that included biblical and spiritual teachings related to the protection of forests. We learned about the human health benefits of spending time in forests. And we learned a little bit about the forces at play in the forests here in BC. And then as a group, we each took time to go into smaller breakout groups and make individual commitments to take action. So everybody who was there that night made a commitment to do more to protect forests in BC. Okay, next slide, please. Our climate justice lead, Anjali Appadurai, did a lot of work with artists and musicians in the past year, and this led to the creation of the Build Back Better Festival last December. It came out of the Just Recovery Coalition, and the event brought together artists and community leaders who are already working on climate justice issues. Music has always played a critical role in the fight for a better world, and we're bringing those voices front and center in the Build Back Better Festival. And we connected folks who are interested in transitioning through the pandemic in a way that centers people's health, resilient communities, and justice for all, both human and non-human. We also joined forces with the newly created Cowichan Public Art Gallery to host the Forest Breath of Life multidisciplinary exhibition and event series, which was dedicated to exploring humanity's complex relationship with forests through art. The event featured an online Youth in the Arts series with works produced by students in the Cowichan Public School District, an in-person exhibit at the Cowichan Valley Arts Council Gallery, and an online webinar with Kieran Nitt from the Sustainabilities, polymath and multidisciplinary artist Randy Cook, who is the hereditary leader of the Montequila people, and painter Carl Sherman, who was a participant in the Eden Grove Artist in Residence program out near Fairy Creek. And if you missed that webinar, it's a great conversation and it's still available on our website. Flossie's work with local leaders included the Bishop Anna Greenwood Lee, and she's been working with her community members to bring climate justice to the work of the church through the Creation Matters ministry. Sierra Club BC has been able to support in the form of our research reports like Intact Forests, Safe Communities, and Clear Cut Carbon, as well as providing opportunities for learning about what a changed relationship with the non-human world might look like right here in this place. Bishop Anna Greenwood Lee personally requested a meeting with the Forest Minister Katrina Conroy to discuss the importance of protecting old growth forests, which are regarded as a sacred inheritance. The role of parents protecting giant trees and raising engaged citizens was a parent-led webinar supported by Sierra Club BC. So local leaders, Brad, Angeline, and Stephen wanted to engage their community of parents, and they invited Sierra Club BC to co-design a webinar empowering other parents to help their kids experience old growth forests firsthand, learn about the mechanisms available to protect local forests, and to talk to their kids about climate change. The event included a suggested day trip that parents could take to show their kids some ancient forests nearby. And we again used breakout groups to brainstorm ideas for how we can engage children and youth in the protection of this incredible place. And everyone left with a commitment to take action as well. Speaking of action, in what can only be described as a true labor of love by lead organizer Flossie and cultural voice Kwastanut Charlene George, Sierra Club BC's new online engagement portal, Invite to Action, has been launched, and it was designed to help identify, train, and support local leadership. We currently have 272 people who have raised their hands to bring their gifts to the climate justice movement. And our first round of relational organizing leadership training brought over a dozen leaders from diverse backgrounds together. And collectively, that group of leaders has been calling and meeting with every single person who has signed up through the Invite Action, creating a lateral network of Sierra Club BC members who are working together across the province to take action with their own communities and bring their gifts to the table. So through this new portal, we now have a community of artists, a community of nurturers who are working to educate the next generation, a new community of benefactors who are giving money and time, and a community of ambassadors who are sharing our work with their network, and a new group of innovators who are bringing their own ideas to the table. And I really want to thank our local leaders, Jane Welton, Ellie Gilchrist, and Colleen Saint-Laurent, who have been just absolutely incredible at welcoming all of these new leaders. So thank you so much, volunteers. Sierra Club BC is also a member of a couple of broad-based organizing coalitions. The one that we're most involved in is Greater Victoria Acting Together, which represents 70,000 members of unions, spiritual communities, frontline service organizations, and environmental groups. And the top 3 priority areas of organizing are around climate, housing, and mental health. The Climate Action Research Team includes dozens of leaders from most of these member organizations who are supporting their own networks to work on climate-related issues like old growth logging, transportation planning, fossil fuel subsidies, and regional climate action. GVAT and many of its member organizations signed on to the Just Recovery principles as well. And Sierra Club BC was instrumental in ensuring that the wording for the Just Recovery principles, which is also known as the Green New Deal for Canada, included direct reference to ecosystem health as part of the overarching all-sector priority upon which all other indexes are dependent. This was such a highlight for me. So we've been absolutely privileged to work with Dr. Julius Chattany. Over the last year, nearly 10,000 people have registered to attend these incredibly popular Learn to Draw series. These webinars have been one of the biggest driving factors in growing our email list, which has now grown to well over 30,000 supporters this year. And it is so inspiring to see that art can be an easy introduction to Sierra Club BC's work. And for many of our longstanding supporters, these webinars have been just a delightful break from signing petitions or calling your MLA. It's just absolutely so much fun. In addition to being really fun and easy to follow art lessons, everyone is jam-packed with fascinating information and stories so that participants always come away learning something about the subject that they're drawing. And I think I saw that Maya just put a link in the chat. You can watch any of the Learn to Draw webinars. It's a really fun thing to do if you need to gather with your friends, but you're still social distancing. You can simultaneously watch these webinars and draw together. It's a lot of fun. By far, our most popular webinar of the year, unsurprisingly, was with forest researcher Suzanne Simard. We had over 3,000 people register for this event, and we actually maxed out our Zoom account with 1,000 people and had an overflow on Facebook with several hundred people watching live on Facebook. Suzanne's incredible work brings together Indigenous knowledge and cutting-edge scientific research, and she's basically turned the forest industry's assumptions upside down by proving that trees and other plants talk to each other across species through the mycelial network in the soil. Instead of individual species competing for resources, forests are vast communities of collaboration, communication, and knowledge. The mycelial network functions just like our own neural and social networks. And if you haven't watched that, her conversation with Sierra Club BC's lead organizer, Flossie Baker, was declared to be the best of her book tour by Dr. Simard herself. So go check it out. It's really worth rewatching. In the vein of some of our more traditional work, we launched the Intact Forest Safe Communities report. It was commissioned by us and produced by Dr. Peter Wood, and it was released with overwhelming mainstream media coverage. We had over 200 mainstream media articles and stories that were published, including national video features on CTV, Global News, CBC, and even the Weather Network did a long video piece on it. Sierra Club BC's senior science advisor, Jens Wieding, was an absolute media star, delivering powerful quotes and being interviewed on television and for print. The report's distribution was boosted by the efforts of a large delegation of volunteers who helped research the names, emails, and addresses of every single elected municipal councillor, mayor, and regional district representative across the province. And copies of the report were distributed to all these elected officials, to band council offices, as well as to every local government office and city hall that we could find. A complimentary webinar with Jens Wieding and the report author Peter Wood was designed for local officials to help empower smaller governments, also put pressure on the provincial government for better forestry policy in defense of the health and safety of all these communities that are at risk from wildfires, floods, and droughts. And if you want a copy of that report, it's available online, but we actually have quite a few physical copies. So happy to pop one in the mail. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to get you a copy of that as well. In addition to the Intact Forest Safe Communities report, Sierra Club BC, oh, it looks like I have an extra one here that we didn't get a slide for, but in addition to that report, we did do some storytelling that also backed up the Intact Forest Safe Communities report. So Forest Community Liaison Robin Strong visited Bert Williams, who's the Senior Archaeological Advisor for the Bonaparte Indian Band in Secwepemc territory. And Bert shared his story of the impacts of the devastating Elephant Hill fire. And so we published that as a companion piece because the stories of how these climate impacts are actually affecting communities can often be even more impactful than just the science that says, you know, this makes it much more dangerous. But when you hear of what it's actually like to live through, the story was a great companion piece to that scientific report. Okay, and so then here we are holding the BC government accountable. So we continue to play an important watchdog role in monitoring what the government is doing. Particularly their progress or lack thereof in protecting old growth forests. So we issued both 6-month and 1-year report cards, giving essentially failing grades to the province on following through on their commitments of the old growth strategic review. So far, they've received 3 Ds and 7 Fs, which isn't great. And they did generate a huge amount of media coverage. And one of my favorite lines was on Global News when Jens Wieding was interviewed. And the Global News anchor said, failing grades from a moderate group like the BC Sierra Club was probably not what the BC NDP was hoping for. And we agree. So hopefully that is helping expedite the process. Okay, so up next, we hosted a movie night. This was super fun. We were able to offer an online screening and a really great panel discussion on the new corporation documentary. Many of you will recall the original corporation documentary, which explored legal personhood status of corporations. So if a corporation is legally a person, what kind of a person is it? And if you put the corporation through a psych evaluation, the end result is that a corporation is basically a psychopath. And the corporate industry responded to this documentary. It was actually hugely influential and nobody liked being called a psychopath. And so then it ended up producing like a whole greenwashing movement of corporations. And so this sequel was produced to sort of explore how that greenwashing took place and how corporations continue to play a leading role in the climate crisis. And so after we offered the online screening, we had over 1,000 people sign up for the conversation with filmmaker Joel Bakken, with activist, organizer, and Seattle City Council member Kshama Savant. And it was hosted by Sierra Club BC's climate justice lead, Anjalia Padarai. And you're also welcome to watch that conversation on our website. It is also available there. The Future of Salmon was another webinar that we hosted. It was fabulous. And salmon are the foundation of life on the West Coast, connecting communities and ecosystems from the ocean all the way into the interior. And right now, these vital beings are on the brink. So in June, Coastal Project lead Mark Worthing hosted a conversation between national bestselling author Alexandra Morton and Sierra Club BC's Forest Relations Coordinator Tlalithala's Carissa Glendale as they discussed the future of salmon. The conversation delved into the impact of fish farms, what happens when they leave, which is that they immediately get healthy again, so that's amazing. And of course, the importance of First Nations taking over management, as well as the deep interconnections between salmon and forests. And I see Maya's put the link there. I was so impressed. And if you don't know our Forest Relations Coordinator, Tlalithala's Carissa, this is an amazing opportunity to learn a little bit more about her and the incredible work that she's done, standing up for wild salmon. So check it out. A conversation with Manathat. This was the first of at least 3 videos that have been produced as part of Cultural Voice Quadra Charlene George's work to bring Coast Salish knowledge and thinking to the work and to the members of Sierra Club BC. And so this video was produced by Charlene and former board member Tiffany Joseph, and they interview Manathat, aka Auntie Marilyn. And she shares her insight into land stewardship, the critical need for environmental restoration, teaching youth about conservation, and being reminded of the multi-valued interconnected ecosystem. Also available, I think Maya just put a link in the chat as well. A Pathway Together is a collaborative work by Elizabeth Jackson, who is Modoc, Hupa, and European ancestry, and is a registered member with the Klamath tribes. And Quadra Charlene George, who is Coast Salish, Nuchanoth, and European ancestry from the Tsuk Nation. And this scholarly work celebrates and builds on the work started with Seeing Through Watcher's Eyes. Many of you will remember that incredible interactive tool that's on our website. And so this new tool, A Pathway Together, invites you into a relationship from an intercultural lens that reimagines what a future pathway could be. And you're invited to explore this interactive presentation at sierraclub.bc.ca/a-pathway-together. So right after Labor Day, we embarked on a reimagined week of action for forests. And this was an incredible week with so many people involved. We kicked off the week with a printmaking lesson, which 600 people signed up for, called Art and Activism. And we alternated with art instruction by me and cultural storytelling with Quadra Charlene George. And printmaking is a powerful art form for activists because once you've carved your stamp, you can make many, many, many prints, which are great for sending to friends, family, or local politicians who need to be reminded of their love for the forest and their responsibility to care for it. On the second day, Sierra Club BC's facilitator of learning, Asher Goodman, hosted an intercultural conversation with Executive Director Hannah Askew and former board members Valine Brown and Darcy Lindbergh, called A Journey Towards a Respectful Relationship with the Forest. The conversation explores how everyone's ancestors held a respectful relationship with the land at some point and how we can learn from each other and remember our own historical responsibility to the non-human world. On day 3, we released the one-year report card that I mentioned before, and we paired it with the social media day of action. So we blitzed all kinds of politicians and our friends. People took to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok to call on the government to fulfill its promise to protect all the remaining at-risk old-growth forests and to transition to a truly sustainable forest industry that prioritizes ecosystem and community health. On the 4th day, we released Reimagining Our Relationships with All Living Beings, a mother tree educational resource. Mother trees are these ancient trees who hold a special responsibility in forests by sharing information and resources with the younger beings that surround them. This online educational material is designed for educators and offers a pathway towards embracing our own interconnections, understanding, and joint responsibility with gratitude. The package was inspired by the works of Dr. Suzanne Simard and Dr. Julius Chattany, and informed by the Indigenous teachings shared with us by Questionnaire Charlene George. And then on the final days of the Forest Week of Action, Questionnaire also led several walks in the forest near Victoria and Vancouver, and participants were able to learn about the many different species that coexist in forests. And she shared Indigenous knowledge about the gifts that these beings offer so freely. We closed the week by following Coast Salish protocol, marking the end of this week of work, but beginning with a new commitment to action. And you can view the closing ceremony at sierraclub.bc.ca/come-together. And the closing ceremony also, because it's a closing of just this week, but it's also a beginning of this new commitment to action. And so I guess I'll ask you to move to the next slide, which is we released our new guide called Being a Voice for the Forest. And this is our new action takers guide for people who really want to do something. And it was co-written by Sierra Club BC's Forest Community Liaison, Robin Strong, and Cultural Voice Questionnaire Charlene George. And this guide is a comprehensive and playful tool to explore how to bring your own gifts to the challenge of protecting forests. There's resources for understanding Indigenous jurisdiction, learning about the colonial laws which govern forestry in BC, information about forest ecology, and suggestions for how an individual or group can effectively take action. And truly, this is an amazing resource with videos and suggested readings, ideas, and all kinds of inspiration. And you can check it out at sierraclub.bc.ca/forest guide. We have been able to support the protesters or the land defenders out at Addicts Ferry Creek by working with wildlife consultant Bernard Schroeder to conduct a radar survey for marbled murrelets in the vicinity. So marbled murrelets and their nests are protected under the Federal Migratory Birds Act and the Provincial Wildlife Act, but protections are only triggered if a nest is found. Marbled murrelet nests are extremely difficult to find because they are located only on top of moss-covered branches of old-growth trees, at least 40 feet off the ground and often much, much higher. So on July 19th, wildlife consultant Bernard Schroeder carried out a radar survey and observed a total of 97 murrelets within 2 kilometers of active cut blocks near Ferry Creek. The radar was able to detect murrelet activity at the top end of Granite Creek and into Ferry Creek watersheds with at least 10 adults circling, which does indicate a proximity to a nesting location. Unfortunately, without explicit documentation of a nest, the protections were not triggered and logging is still continuing. So we're currently exploring what other options may exist to escalate the documentation of the marbled murrelet nests. Coastal Project leads Mark Worthing and our Forest Relations Coordinator, Tlalitalas Carissa Glendale, were able to conduct a field assessment with, I think I've got my script backwards. I'll just skip ahead and come back to this one. So during a field assessment, the same people, Mark and Tlalitalas, were able to identify some at-risk karst features. So karst limestone is a unique landscape feature where water can appear and disappear from rivers into sinkholes and caves, really, really magical places. And often the water is incredibly clean, rich with minerals. And ancient forests which grow near these features can never regrow if they're harvested. It's just impossible to recreate. And so Mark and Carissa were able to document the area and share information with the Conservation Committee of the BC Speleological Federation, who in turn was able to get this cut block that had been laid out in karst landscape, and they were able to have it removed from the BC Timber Sales cut block because if they had harvested there, it would have permanently destroyed the karst feature. Okay, yes, on to bear dams. So again, Coastal Projects lead Mark Worthing and Forest Relations Coordinator Tlalitalas, as well as Makwala Smith, were able to conduct field assessments with Helen Davis, who's a registered professional RP Bio, registered professional biologist who specializes in bear dens. And although Black bears are not endangered. The old growth forests where the bear's den are becoming increasingly endangered. And so we're hoping to work with Helen to help identify and protect bear dens. As you can imagine, you need a pretty large tree for a bear to fit inside and be able to drag a bunch of moss and ferns inside, as well as potentially have babies there over the winter. And as old growth forests are logged, bears are increasingly having to rely on stumps rather than trees, which will eventually decay. So current forest management practices don't, you're not supposed to be cutting a bear den, but not everybody is trained in how to protect bear dens, and current forest management practices do not ever plan for trees to regrow to the size of a tree where a bear den could be created. You know, we're not managing cut blocks for 700 to 1,000 years. We can hardly manage them for a 4-year election cycle, let alone for many human generations. So our hope is that we will continue to work with Helen. We will continue to work with nations on whose territory these bear dens exist. And in the future, you'll hear more from us about a video and an action center to help protect bears and their bear dens. The Tree of Life project is an exciting new project. It is a tripartite network of folks meeting at the ground between artistic expression, Indigenous or traditional ecological knowledge, and cutting-edge scientific research. Some of the people involved are Dr. Suzanne Samard, Makwila Randy Cook, Lalitalas, Carissa Glendale, Cody Nelson, Smayetsik, Teresa Ryan, Kelly Richardson, Paul Wald, and Mark Worthing. So a bunch of really, really cool people that I wish I was going out into the woods with. In this project, we've been trying to pool the different ways of knowing, different styles of thinking about and advocating for forests and mix them together to try to cross-pollinate each other's work so that scientists are able to do research and communicate back to advocates, artists, and Indigenous knowledge holders, and translate what is known in Indigenous culture into scientific terms and vice versa. We're hoping it will be a space where Indigenous knowledge holders can explain to scientists in not so dissimilar terms how to think about their research moving forward, or how they could be articulating research questions from an Indigenous worldview. And artists can take that vast complexity of these spiritual and ecological principles and tell that story to the world in a way that people can deepen their understanding about how important forests are. And we just kicked this off, and the role that Sierra Club BC is playing is to bring all these people together and to help facilitate those dialogues. And I look forward to sharing more progress on this project in the coming years. Okay, and this one is sort of a catch-all. Supporting Indigenous-led conservation solutions. So some of our less publicly visible but extremely important work that we're doing is in developing trusted relationships with Indigenous communities. And this work is often slow. It literally moves at the speed of trust. And it's not often appropriate for us to share publicly everything that we're doing behind the scenes. And sometimes this is because to do so would actually undermine the work and potentially give forestry companies an easy opportunity to try and disrupt what we're doing. And sometimes it's not appropriate because the work has yet to bear fruit and we're still working on developing those relationships. And so this is just sort of a sampling of some of the relationships that our campaigns team members have been working to build. So in Pachidat and Suk territories, we've been supporting work with the conservation biologists in Nuchalnath territories out in Nootka Sound and near Tassis. We've worked directly with the Nuchatlit, mobilizing resources towards that nation's title case, accompanying into the field qualified professionals to produce expert opinions and reports which demonstrate Nuchatlit's continuous occupation of Nootka Island. They have to demonstrate continuous occupation in order to win their title case. And so we're trying to support them with scientific research. We've also provided coordination support for close to a dozen Friends of Nuchatlit meetings and planning sessions with Nuchatlit counselors and with Jeff Woodward, their lawyer. In Namgis, Kwagild, and Montegila territory, out in Alert Bay, Port Hardy, and Sayward, we've been doing lots of field work documenting ecological damage to watersheds, wildlife habitat, and culturally significant features such as culturally modified trees or cedar bark harvesting areas. We've supported the Montegila Sovereignty Initiative and projects, including the reawakening of Hiladi Village by helping to bring out the Little Big House into Montegila territory. We've coordinated culturally modified trees reports. We've conducted a Georgie Lake yew tree field survey. And so yew trees are actually quite small, but you can go around and measure the circumference of these trees, and it doesn't take a huge tree to actually trigger these special tree regulations. And so by getting people out on the land and actually measuring these trees, we can help stop cut blocks out on their territory. We hosted a bear den workshop for Quatsino First Nation. We published joint statements with Kwakwaka'wakw hereditary chiefs. And we also released a statement in solidarity with the Muchalat First Nations to take steps to end unfair discriminatory trespassing by Western forest products on their lands. So it's just a little sample of all of the amazing work that Mark and Tlalithalas and Makwala have done over the course of the year. And I wish there was more time to tell you everything, but if you ever have questions, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm happy to share more. And now I will pass it over to our education program lead, Haya, to tell more about what she's been up to.
Hi, everyone. I guess I realized for many of you, this might be a new face. My name is Haya, and I've very recently joined the Sierra Club BC team in the role of education program lead. And so part of stepping into this role for me meant that I had to move from Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat territory in Toronto. And I'm really grateful to now be residing on the territory of the Lekwungen speaking people. And so since I've joined kind of after the end of the 2020-2021 school year, I don't have like a full picture, but I know enough that I can address the question that was asked a little bit earlier about what things looked like for education this past school year. And so COVID definitely did affect program delivery. So the number of programs that we delivered was affected, as well as I guess our ability to travel, or our educators to travel. And so, but nevertheless, we were able to pivot. And so part of this meant that our educators were really focusing on building really deeper connections in Victoria and in Vancouver, revisiting some of the schools that they, I guess, over multiple occasions. Another shift that we've made to adapt to the COVID pandemic was that our education programs were being offered completely outdoors for the ones that were being offered in person. And I guess in connection to that, our programs for the older students, so the middle school age kids, was also available online, because there were some school districts that weren't permitting folks to come in and facilitate any workshops in their school. And so we've made adjustments to that. But since my joining the team in the summer, I've been working really closely with Sierra Club BC's cultural voice, Geraldine, to transform our offerings of education workshops for schools so that they are better in line with our strategic plan. And so part of this transformational work meant making some changes to the names of the programs. And so on the next slide, we've got a couple of the names there, the new names. Maybe in looking at this, you've also noticed that one of the things that we're offering now is workshops for high school students, which is really exciting. So for all of the ages that we're offering programs to, at the center of really all of these programs is really a place-based approach that is in place-based authentic voice. We're also ensuring that the programs are being delivered using or with recycled wisdom, that there's a big focus on our interconnections and really looking at our relationships with all beings, and that the programs themselves are hands-on and very sensory. And so that's really been exciting. And so another piece as well of education's new direction has also been making some adjustments to where we are delivering our education workshops. And so we really wanted to focus our delivery into areas that have been more underserved by our organization in the education space. And so on the next slide, you'll see that these are the areas of service that we really want to focus in on for the 2021 and 2022 school year. And so the big one for us is North Island, where we're going to offer programs for kindergarten to 5th grade, but there might also be some middle school and high school offerings. We'll see. Another area is continuing to offer in the Greater Vancouver area. And one that we've actually just kicked off the new school year with has actually been the Gulf Islands. I literally got off the ferry from Salt Spring a few hours ago. But yeah, the entire education team has been really hard at work delivering the versions of our programs that we've worked so hard to transform. And I'm happy to share that they've already been so well received by schools. If you go to the next slide, this is actually an image that was sent to us from a class that did a program with our education team just on Tuesday. And together we were learning about the Sanchothan moon cycle. And we borrowed some of Charlene's artwork and offered it to the students so that they could continue their learning outside of our time together. So we were really grateful that they were able to send this to us, which was really sweet. And so at least on my end, I'm really excited to continue all the amazing collaborative work that's been happening on education's end in terms of moving the new direction forward. And I'm also really excited to continue sharing that work with all of you. And so I'd like to invite all of you to get in touch with me if you have any questions or if you're interested in learning more about the awesome work that we're doing as it continues to move forward. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Darius for the Treasurer's Report.
So before we go over to Darius, I want to give space first to thank everybody for the presentations and also see if there's anybody who wanted to ask a question to Hannah or any of the staff. You can do that either by using the chat function, using the reaction button to put up your hand, or if you turn on your screen and you wave, I'll also see you and we can unmute you then. I know there are a couple of people on the phone. You can also, is there somebody they can email if they have any particular questions about anything they've heard? So if you have any questions about anything you've heard and you're on the phone, you can email gifts@sierraclub.bc.ca. That's GIFTS@sierraclub.bc.ca. And Julius, did you have a question? See if I can unmute you. Or can somebody unmute Julius? I'm working on it.
Julius, you should be able to speak now if you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, got it. Thank you. Actually, yeah, I had one question. Elizabeth, you were talking about various, those are really awesome programs. I really enjoyed hearing about the way that you're, for example, interacting with First Nations communities to involve them as well in many of the work to bring the land back into proper stewardship. And one of the things that I was wondering about is whether you folks have ever addressed the problem of, this was something that was brought up in legislature by MLA Adam Olson to David Eby regarding, oh, and there's little doggy popped up, sorry. I was distracted by doggies. Hannah's doggy. Anyway, the problem that the wording of forestry contracts between the Crown and First Nations is such that it drives a wedge of division into First Nations, because it requires the leaders to refrain from doing anything or say anything that would impede the forestry resulting from the agreement, and then also coerce them to make sure that their community members do not interfere as well, which is a really, really huge problem. I can send the link to that legislative meeting, for example, the transcript for it that Adam Olson had published. But I'm not sure if that's something that you'd.
Well, when we get questions like, what does Indigenous rights have to do with saving the environment? This is exactly where the problem lies. So you have a situation where the band council system was created under the Indian Act. It's one of the most racist pieces of legislation, and it is the legacy of colonialism that causes not only this environmental destruction, but these terrible divisions within a community where the community, has this imposed band council structure upon it. They often will also have a functioning hereditary leadership structure. And those two systems are inherently at odds with each other. And so a community is often forced into these revenue sharing agreements because they need revenue to support their community through that band council system. And so they're forced to make this awful choice between financial impoverishment or impoverishment of their natural resources. And it's a Sophie's choice that nobody should be forced to make. And, that's one of the reasons that it was so important for us to continue to actually make human to human relationships with actual people who are being forced to make these decisions. Because if we were to come and, try to assert our own agenda into the situation without really understanding some of the complex choices that these people are being forced to make, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to make any progress in helping that community or in protecting the environment. And they're so deeply connected that it's just not even an option to approach things with the same way that we used to. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's exactly. And this is the kind of thing, exactly that, that it's forcing them to not only to divide and to be less cohesive as a community, but to willingly, effectively give up resources that should never have been exploited in the first place. Yeah, and I'm going to send the link to the.
Please share it in the chat, and
right here.
And you will hear more from us. It's one of the reasons that there's no silver bullet to this problem. It has to be rooted in place. It has to be rooted in community. It has to have the, enthusiastic consent and leadership of the people who, on whose territory our work takes place. Yeah.
This is something that we actually brought up in a Stand.Earth meeting that we had in our riding with David Eby, because he's our MLA, it happens to be, so he's more likely to interact with us. So we brought up this question specifically to him, and he seemed to be less familiar with it, but he said he'd look into it. So we're going to meet again in October. And hopefully we can keep pushing him on this.
Yeah, good job. Thanks for doing that, Julius.
Whatever we can, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julius.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of the questions here. There's one from Bruce. Maybe there's somebody on staff who can respond about, he was asked to join a forestry group, somebody you can contact. And then there's one about our education programs from Sarah. You have many wonderful school-age programs. I'm wondering what is going on for early childhood. Is there somebody from staff who would be willing to comment on that?
I can talk to Bruce. Bruce, we're just in a moment where our staff is quite stretched, and we haven't actually formalized the forestry group yet. We sent out an initial email saying, raise your hand if you're one of these people, and you will hear from us again. We've got a lot on our plate right now, and we're working as fast as we can, but just please be patient, and I promise we'll follow up with you.
I'm happy to answer the education question, but I was hoping to maybe get some clarity for early childhood education. Are we talking like preschool and younger?
I think it's pre-K, so before kindergarten.
So right now, in terms of our education programs offerings, we don't have any plans for early childhood. However, it's something that I've personally really enjoyed facilitating in some of the previous work that I've done. And so as we're considering education's new direction, that's something that I would really like to think about as we move forward. But in terms of what's available right now, what we're doing is that we're connecting directly with, I guess, through the Invite to Action website with nurturers. And so offering some resources, activities, and other things like that. with the folks that are signed up. And so hopefully that's something that they could share with their little ones.
That's great. Bruce, I'm just going to ask that final question you sent to me. So apologies. So we're wondering if you can speak to any of the work Sierra Club might be doing, and put the staff on the spot again, about protecting watersheds and freshwater, particularly if you do anything around bottled water, or is there any staff who'd be willing to be put on the spot for a moment?
Do we actually have any of our campaigners here? I'm trying, I can't see our participant list. I would love to put one of them on the spot, but I know that was actually part of the work that Robin Strong was doing when she was with us. And it is a position that, you know, we're hoping to fill again. And so obviously there's absolute overlap between forests and watersheds. I mean, they're almost the same thing, essentially, in that forests really are most of the watersheds in British Columbia. They're so intertwined. And actually, water is sometimes an easier way to kind of like get into the forest question, because it's very easy for people to understand when there's a problem with their drinking water. And you have examples like up in Courtney Comox, where they logged within their watershed, and now that community is forced to spend a gazillion dollars on a water treatment plant because there's sediment that's getting into their drinking water. And so it's certainly an avenue that we definitely talk about when we're in community, but I don't know that it's like an explicit strategy at the moment.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for the questions, and thank you for the staff for their willingness to be put on the spot. I appreciate that. I don't have any more questions, so we're going to continue to pass it over to Darius. So Darius, over to you.
Thanks, James. Yeah, first of all, I'm Darius Mays. I'm the treasurer for the board of directors, and I'm calling from the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Really tough to follow up those presentations, really tiny things. But, you know, I know for some folks like myself, you know, we get really jazzed about financial statements and balance sheets and cash flows. And so is someone going to be putting the financial statement, link to the financial statements in the chat? Yeah, so these would have been distributed in advance as well. Just a few comments briefly. You know, COVID-19 obviously has had a huge impact on everyone. We've heard a little bit about the impact on operations, but you know, I think some of the good news stories for me is we've seen amazing engagement. You know, thanks to the additional staff that have been brought on. Folks have been very generous when they can be, and really coming out and supporting the organization. And they're seeing a lot of monthly donors. So just obviously very appreciative of all the support we've been receiving. And all charities have been challenged over the year to raise money and to keep operations going. But we're actually comparing year to year. It's actually there hasn't been as big a drop as other organizations have been experiencing. And I think it's something that's given a lot of peace of mind. Certainly as treasurer is our cash flows. So we see some very healthy cash in the bank. And so that's allowed us, we're not having to watch every transaction, count the checks every month, do we have enough money in the bank? And that's, I think that's really allowed the staff then to focus on doing the great work that's been described. So again, we're in a really healthy position with regards to cash flow. We're still seeing great donations, and again, the great grant writers for the team are continuing to bring in very important grants. So there isn't, there's obviously some change year to year, but with regards to the financial statements, there isn't too much that I would call out in terms of big shifts or changes, and certainly nothing that I would point to in terms of areas of concern. So maybe I'll pause there, And if there's any specific questions that folks have with regards to again, the cash flow or the balance sheets or the income statement, more than happy to focus on those. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, that's the story I want to tell is we're in good shape. And so if there's no questions, because I don't want to be between folks and their dinner, then I will, let me just get my wording up. I think, so if someone could advance the slides. So the first step is actually, we're going to have a motion to approve the auditor. So the financial statements that were provided to you were audited by KPMG. They've been our auditors for many, many years. Again, they've given us a clean bill of health, and again, they themselves had no red flags, which was always great to hear. So I'll start by recommending that KPMG be our auditor for the Sierra Club of BC Foundation for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021. Thanks, Mark. So, and yeah, so just to have a motion to approve them.
Utina Moverness
is Mark, and then do we have a seconder? Oh, thank you, Dakota. So then we'll call the vote. All members in favor.
And we'll count that, Mark and Rebecca. Thank you.
Any opposed or abstain?
Sorry, did the poll go up?
It did.
Everybody get a chance to vote on it who wanted to? Seemed like it came up a little bit too quickly. Are we comfortable with that result? Or that worked for folks? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so that did pass. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next motion, which is to approve the financial statements. So again, if I could have, I'd like to make, may I have a motion to approve the audit financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2020. Thank you again, Mark. And James, you can be our seconder. So again, we'll bring it to a vote. All right.
It's not quite as riveting as watching the election results come in.
Well, much quicker though. All right. And so that also passed. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. And we'll pass you on to, I believe it's Jordan.
Thanks, Darius. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Just checking. So I am here as a member at large and board member to bring a report of the nominations committee. We are recommending that our members elect 2 directors today, and those standing for the board are James Kakola and Darius Mays. The floor is, however, open to nominate others. So if anyone wants to put their name forward or wishes to be nominated, or nominate someone else, they can identify that in the chat box or raise your hand using the function in Zoom. And then we can give you a chance to speak your case. We'll unmute you for that. So I'm just going to give an opportunity. I'm calling for nominations. I am not seeing any raised hands, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So just once again, we are calling for nominations. Okay, seeing none. I want to ask James and Darius if you will accept the nomination.
I do.
I do.
Phew. Wonderful. Excellent. So next up then we'll need a motion. And the motion will be to approve the standing nominees as directors of Sierra Club BC Foundation. James Kakola and Darius Mays. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, June and Mark. We'll bring that poll up. And please indicate whether you're in favor, opposed, or abstain. And again, we're moving to approve the standing nominees as directors of Sierra Club. That's James Kakola and Darius Mays. Looks like the votes have stopped coming in, but I'll give it another minute. Don't want to rush anybody. Okay, I'm going to call it. So the motion has passed. Congratulations and thank you to James and Darius for your continued service to Sierra Club. And thank you to the membership for voting. And I'll pass it back to Elizabeth for the volunteer awards. It really is the best part of the program.
I know, I get to do all the fun stuff. So we are going to be giving 4 awards this evening. I am always really deeply moved by the opportunity to recognize individuals who have done incredible work. And the first award that we're giving away tonight is the Rosemary Fox Conservation Achievement Award. Sierra Club BC developed this award, which recognizes individuals for significant achievement in protecting wildlife and wildlands. And we are giving this award to Marion Cumming in recognition of her work returning land to its rightful guardians. Marion is a woman who holds my deepest respect, and I'm going to just share some abridged notes that she shared with me, which I think speak to her character in a way that I could never write as beautifully. So I'm just going to read them. I was born in Toronto 85 years ago. My mother, an accomplished interior decorator with a love of beauty, and a businessman father with a love of people who left a lasting inspiration. As a teenager, despondent over the state of the world, I was hospitalized for a year with suicidal thoughts, refusing to speak or eat. Healed through prayer, I became aware of the power of love and gratitude and contemplated becoming a social worker. As a student at Principia College, I had no boyfriends, just dozens of brothers. As an art student in Mexico for 2 years, befriended by activist students dedicated to social justice, I became aware of the need to alleviate poverty and overcome racism. I'm grateful to have been married to the love of my life for 39 years. My late husband, Bruce Cumming, was an outstanding plant physiologist, a remarkable environmentalist, and animal rights advocate. At the University of New Brunswick in 1971, he took issue with the forestry and engineering departments decrying clear-cutting of forest land. A half century later, we continue to react strongly to forest devastation, exemplified by the Sierra Club's strong stand for protecting Addax, Fairy Creek, and other ancient forests alongside Indigenous and other forest defenders. Settling on a New Brunswick farm over 200 acres on the outskirts of Fredericton, Bruce and I became keen environmentalists. In 1990, at the time of the Oka crisis, Bruce and I demonstrated alongside Indigenous defenders of the sacred land. Tenants on the farm told us that the Fredericton Daily Gleaner had interviewed a Maliseet elder, Alma Brooks, who was looking for land for the healing of her people. As Bruce was about to retire and we were moving to Victoria, it led us to embark on what we call land return. We discovered that our land in Peniac on the Nashwaak River was unceded territory. For over 30 years, that beautiful land had been in Indigenous hands now, and they returned it. With the support of elders and friends, there is an effort to transfer the title to the adjacent St. Mary's, Wolastoqiyik First Nation. I probably just butchered that, so I apologize. I'm not super fluent in Mi'kmaq. In BC, I'm thankful to have returned title to Quamachin, a small acreage on the Coxsila River, to Indigenous hands, and with the Chickawitch Sacred Land on Sunny Lane in Oak Bay, she's bequeathed to the Victoria Native Friendship Centre. I'm delighted to see progress being made in building cultural bridges connecting Indigenous and neighbourly friends. We're working on a challenging urban covenant intended to reflect Indigenous respect for the land, to preserve the green space over the generations. Warmest regards with gratitude for the legacy of Rosemary Fox, Marion. Marion, you are truly an inspiration. I know that you're on the call today. I raise my hands to you. It is such an incredible legacy, and I know that Rosemary Fox would be equally impressed with the work that you have done. So thank you so much. We're really honored to give this award to you today. The next award is the Geraldine Irby Award for Volunteerism. And this award recognizes those who work behind the scenes and lay the groundwork for the organization's success. Before I move on, James, did you want to add something that was relevant to that?
No, sorry, I was doing the applaud reaction.
Oh, okay, good. Yes, applaud away. So the recipient of this Geraldine Award for Volunteerism is going to Dr. Julius Chattany, who you all just met, for his work in creating and hosting the Learn to Draw webinars. Julius is a freelance natural history illustrator and biological sciences graduate. His passion has been drawing dinosaurs since childhood, but over the years, he's expanded his portfolio to include all branches of scientifically inspired artwork. He's collaborated on projects with several major museums and book publishers from around the globe, including the National Geographic Society, the Royal Tyrrell Museum. He's a Master of Science graduate of Ecology and Environmental Biology from the University of Alberta and a PhD graduate in Microbiology from the University of Manitoba. And his recent projects include phosphorescent and silver engraved prehistoric themed coins for the Royal Canadian Mint, several life-size dinosaur murals up to 150 feet long for the Royal Ontario Museum. And one of his fun new projects is that he got to design a new dinosaur themed beer can for the Medicine Hat Brewing Company for their Reaper of Death 2.0 Devil NEIPA. The reason that Julius is being awarded the Geraldine Irby Award is specifically for his incredible Learn to Draw webinars that he's been hosting on behalf of Sierra Club BC entirely as a volunteer. We met Julius just 2 years ago when he volunteered to paint a live painting at a fundraiser for us in Vancouver. And since that day, he has taught nearly 10,000 Sierra Club BC supporters how to draw orcas, marmots, lampreys, mother trees, and spotted owls. And his volunteering has opened the door to thousands of creative people who may not otherwise have connected with our work. So using his talents as an artist and a scientist, He's brought together two different learning styles in a way that's fun for everyone. And we are just so grateful to you, Julius, for all of the work that you've done behind the scenes to make those webinars a success. I know how much work it is to prepare for those in advance, and then for you to give your time so freely is just incredibly generous. And I will never forget the first Spotted Owl webinar, which was so much fun. And it's just kicked off a whole legacy of really joyful work that we've been doing since that day. So thank you so much, Julius. The next award is the Jack Hemphill Exceptional Volunteer Service Award, and Jack's memory recognizes individuals for their valuable contributions and commitments as volunteers. And this year we are awarding it to the Sierra Quadra group for their outstanding legacy of volunteerism. There are too many people to name. I'm going to name a few, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some, so I apologize if I've forgotten anyone. But the Sierra Quadra board members, Bonnie Brownstein, Robin Budd, Ray Grigg, Geraldine Kenny, Angelica Koch, and Fern Cornelson all deserve a mention, as well as Ralph and Lanny Keller and Brianne Quinnell of Spirit of the West Adventures, who have just, dedicated a ton of their own time and energy in service of the environment. Sierra Quadra for over 20 years has been organizing and staging the annual Quadra Island Beach Cleanup, which is a completely volunteer-driven event involving hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours. They were motivated to start this beach cleanup 20 years ago when they saw styrofoam and oyster farm cages and dozens of tires and plastic littering the local beaches. And so they have been doing it every single year. And it's a great event where young and old participate together and really bring the community together. But it's not just beach cleanups. There have been public education series with monthly guest speakers. They've fundraised tens of thousands of dollars for Alexandra Morton's work protecting salmon. And this is from a community of just a couple thousand people, mind you. So this is really incredible. They've fundraised and written letters for the Peace River Valley, for the nation's fighting pipelines and tankers. They passed a plastic bag ban decades ago. And yeah, it's really just incredible how much work that the Sierra Quadra folks have done. So thank you to Geraldine Kenny and to all of the Sierra Quadra people. Let's see, the next award, my script has gotten a little wonky here, so I'm going to have to try and open up the thing here so I can try and pronounce the word. It's the Yakudong Award, which is a Haida award, word, which means respect. And it is extremely fitting that Valene Brown is the first recipient of this new Climate Justice Award because she has shown us what climate justice looks like and what is possible when we work together for climate action that uplifts Indigenous laws and jurisdiction. Valene played a key leadership role in the campaign to stop Enbridge. Steadfast in her determination to protect Haida territory and the entire North Coast from the threat of the Enbridge Northern Gateway project that would have brought super tankers carrying tar sands crude through North Coast waters and right past Haida Gwaii, Valene mobilized, encouraged, and supported Haida and non-Haida to stand shoulder to shoulder united against Enbridge. With an approach that always centered Haida jurisdiction and respect for Haida laws, and also the laws and leadership of other Indigenous nations, Valene supported Northern communities to speak out for an oil-free coast. For example, she organized islanders to present to the federal joint review panel that was considering the project and fundraised for Indigenous legal fees. She has also been a steady and constant voice speaking up for energy alternatives and has led the way in encouraging Haida Gwaii to transition to renewable energy. In her humble way, Valene constantly uplifts the leadership of others while again and again demonstrating generous, compassionate leadership herself. She's an inspiration to many of us, and we are so grateful for her leadership because united we did defeat Enbridge, and there's one less threat facing Haida territory and the North Coast. Valene also joined the board of Sierra Club BC and was instrumental in bringing new voices, particularly young voices and voices of color to the board. And she helped extensively with the creation of our strategic plan, Growing into Balance, serving as a committee member during the Interweave coaching process that led to the strat plan. And so we're so grateful that plan was definitely improved with her voice there. And we're incredibly grateful to create this new award and to give this first award to you. If you're interested in supporting Valeen's work, she would like to invite all settlers to consider joining the 1 Day's Pay campaign. The concept is that allies are invited to donate 1 day's pay to an Indigenous-led organization, and that's at onedayspay.ca. And Maya's going to put that in the chat. So thank you so much to our award winners. It's really an honor that we're able to give this to you, and thank you again. So the next thing is to honor the memories of 3 founding members of Sierra Club BC who passed away in the last year. Sierra Club BC was founded in 1969, and I suspect that we will have more of these, but this was really a big year in terms of loss for the Sierra Club. And I'd just like to share a little bit about these 3 amazing people, Terry Simmons, Rosemary Fox, and Ken Farkasen. So Terry Simmons, this great photo of him on the left, this is him aboard the Greenpeace. He was an interesting character and really quite a force of nature is the best way to describe it. So he is a founding member of Sierra Club BC as well as Greenpeace. And his achievements included preventing development of the Cypress Bowl and Wreck Beach in Vancouver. He got himself in trouble with Sierra Club USA at least twice, being summoned to the head offices in San Francisco, first for registering the name Sierra Club with the BC Societies Act without their permission, and for illegally photocopying their letterhead, officially giving birth to Sierra Club BC. Then again, after a fellow member of the Don't Make a Wave committee was interviewed on Vancouver Talk Radio, in which this guy blurted out that he was going to visit Anchica, Alaska to witness an American nuclear test. Sierra Club BC or Sierra Club USA did not want to get involved in the peace movement, and they were restricting their activities to the environmental movement. So again, Terry was summoned down to San Francisco for reprimanding. But Simmons really just understood the Don't Make a Wave committee to be limited to 3 people who were going to charter a boat, and they weren't really acting on behalf of the Sierra Club. So he was able to assure them that all was well. And then he helped organize a rock concert in which Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Philip Ox, and Chilliwack performed, raising enough money to charter a vessel for the trip to Alaska. And that vessel was originally named the Phyllis McCormack, but it was renamed Greenpeace. And for that voyage is really understood to have been the genesis of what is now the Greenpeace International Environmental Organization. And this year, Manifa was able to visit Terry in hospice right before he passed away, and managed to bring him flowers and a note from the staff, which I think is quite incredible. She's this really beautiful, cheerful, young Muslim woman who showed up and said, "I'm here on behalf of Sierra family." And they let her into hospice, and where she was able to personally deliver this gift and note and express to him our gratitude for his work in founding Sierra Club BC. Next is Rosemary Fox, who died in January 20th in Smithers, BC. She was 90 years old. Sierra Club's Conservation Achievement Award is, of course, named after her. And she joined the newly formed Sierra Club BC in the early 1970s, serving as a director and later board chair until the 1990s. And it's impossible to unravel the many committees and working groups that she served on, but they did include providing input into the province's wolf management, helping to establish the Stikine River Provincial Park, working on land use plans for the Babine River and the Kispiox Valley. In later years, she also sat on boards for the Bulkley Valley Research Centre, the Community Resources Board, the Environmental Mining Council of BC, Nature Canada, and the Conservation Committee of BC Nature. And one of her greatest achievements led to a higher standard of wildlife management in BC, which is based on ecosystem management rather than the archaic specific species only management, where it was just used to manage hunting populations. And I was really fortunate to meet Rosemary at Sierra Club BC's 50th anniversary party in 2019, where she was able to present her namesake award to her dear longtime friend and Sierra Club member, Rick Careless. It was a really special moment. So we're so grateful to Rosemary for all of her work, and her legacy carries on in her namesake award. And then this one really got me. Ken Farkasen passed away suddenly on August 8th at the Vic General. He was 86. And Ken remained an active dues-paying member right up until the days before his death. I actually found an unopened email that he had sent just a couple of days before he died to me, asking about Sierra Club BC's position on a proposed LNG plant. That Ken had actually been planning to attend Fairy Creek, although he did express that he was feeling a bit old to get arrested, but he was considering doing it anyway. Ken worked really closely with Terry on the protection of the Cypress Bowl and worked tirelessly for the protection of the Skagit River Valley, including where he recently helped stop some logging that was happening in the Manning Park Donut Hole, which is a little spot in the middle of Manning Park where mineral rights were never resolved. And so they were excluded from the park, but it was never the intention that that area would be logged. And so when this BC NDP government approved some logging, Ken and Tom Perry and a couple of longstanding NDP members called a meeting with some uppers and managed to get that stopped. So that was really, really incredible. And I just wanted to say that Ken had expressed to me in the last year that he was so impressed with the new direction of Sierra Club BC. We've lost some members in our transition to do our work differently. And Ken was absolutely faithful to us. And he said that he really, really understood the connection between Indigenous rights, title, and responsibility, and the protection of ecosystems. He absolutely got it. And I was just very moved by his humility, openness, and loyalty to our work. He literally never missed his dues a single year since 1969. And we're so grateful to have had an incredible member like him. And all three of these formidable humans will be missed. And I personally feel honored to follow in their footsteps. I think it's back to you, James.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to all of those who were given an award tonight. In closing, I'd like to draw your attention to our annual report, which is going to be put into the chat. This report highlights some of the key facts and figures for you. It will also be posted to our website following today's meeting. I want to give a very special thanks to our board members, staff, our amazing volunteers and champions. This work wouldn't be possible without any of you. And again, a thank you to our outgoing board members. For those who are on the phone, or if you have any questions that you need to follow up with, Elizabeth did put her email in the chat. It's gifts@sierraclub.bc.ca. That's gifts@sierraclub.bc.ca if you have any further questions. And with that, it's 1 minute after 7. So if we were planning on ending at 7, we did a pretty good job. So thank you so much for attending tonight, and we'll hope to see you in person someday soon.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for your support. We can't do this work without members like you.